Hi there, this is John Wilkinson again from History Made Easier. In this presentation, I'm going to take a look at what the Nazi Party stood for in the 1920s, before Hitler gained complete control over the party. And I'll do so by showing different characteristics of its policies: revolutionary, radical, and reactionary. A distinction that may be difficult, but give it some thought. And in the process, I'll show just how the Nazi Party utterly contradicted itself. When you come across this in answering questions, don't be concerned. It's not your fault. Those contradictions existed, and you should show them when it's necessary to do so. Point them out. I think this presentation will leave you with a very sophisticated understanding of just what the Nazi Party stood for. Truly A-star stuff. At the same time as renaming themselves the National Socialist German Workers' Party, Drexler and Hitler drew up the Nazi Party's 25-point programme in February 1920. At this point, there was more of a socialist dimension to it, Drexler's influence. Hitler would quietly drop this side of the programme the closer he got to power, and with Drexler gone, and rid himself of it altogether when he got rid of Rom, and in so doing weakened the SA as a force within the party. Back in 1920, the 25-point programme was designed to attract as wide a body of support as possible. Nationalists, of course, but also peasant farmers, the lower middle class, and workers, and both men and women. But it was, nevertheless, both revolutionary and radical, and it was a mass of contradictions. The party was always a revolutionary party, seeking to overthrow the existing order and bring about fundamental change, and revolutionary in both the means and the end result. It was going to be a break from the past. In the early 1920s, it was more of a revolutionary party than a legitimate political party. Don't forget that in 1923 it sought to overthrow Weimar rather than participate in a democracy it detested. And even when Hitler made his decision to hold our noses and enter the Reichstag, it remained revolutionary in the way it foresaw a Germany under Nazi rule, calling for strong authoritarian government, and of course the end of the Weimar Republic, and so Weimar democracy. The Nazis also believed that only pure-blooded Germans should be citizens, and that would not include Jews, who would be removed from all positions of influence. Immigration would be tightly controlled, as well as any foreign influence of the press, in a Germany for Germans. In this racist view of the world, Aryans were seen as the master race. The Nazis thought there was a hierarchy of races. Now, what is revolutionary in outcome and what is radical does overlap, so don't get too bogged down in that. But I think radical offers something very different from the mainstream, far-reaching, but it's still attached to what existed before. For example, Hitler came to believe in the Führer principle, or Führerprinzip, that Germany should be ruled by a strong leader who knew his mind and would act ruthlessly. This is radical, but it's not totally removed from the way the Kaiser had wanted to rule. And the Nazi Party's economic and social policies in the 1920s also show their radicalism. Their economic policy was to support capitalism and ensure a healthy middle class. But the economy would be directed by and for the state. They called for the nationalisation of trusts or cartels, like the Steel Trust, the profits from large industries to be shared with the state. There was a socialist dimension to their demands too. They called for the abolition of income not earned through work, and the takeover of large department stores by communities of small traders. Very radical. They were strong on law and order and the maintenance of a sound middle class. And they also called for improved education and welfare support, including better health care and generous old age pensions. But they didn't agree with payments to the unemployed. And yet, despite their revolutionary nature and their radical policies, the Nazis were at the same time very, very reactionary. That is, reacting against what has happened, against change, wanting to return to the old status quo. So they can be seen as traditionalists, conservative in nature. A mass of contradictions. They looked to the German peasant as the source and preserver of German values, and they sought to uphold the traditional roles of men and women. The election poster I show on this slide is from 1932, but the sentiment it expresses, women, save the German family, vote for Adolf Hitler. They were there in the 1920s too. They wanted to overthrow the Treaty of Versailles and Saint-Germain, and they wanted to make Germany a great power again, make it respected, even feared by other countries. They wanted a strong, centrally controlled government, as in the days of Bismarck, and we could say Wilhelm II. They wanted to unite all Germans, something many Germans wanted when Germany was unified. So they wanted Anschluss and to create more living space, Lebensraum. The Nazis were anti-democratic and opposed to the Weimar Republic. They were also fiercely opposed to communism. Reactionary. I hope this proves a useful analysis for you. I feel it shows how consistent Hitler was in what he wanted to achieve. Forget the socialist parts of the 25-point programme. Hitler never believed in them. And it also shows, I think, how naive people were. Both Germans who voted for him or didn't do enough to prevent him gaining power, and those like Chamberlain who appeased him when he was in power. So you can use what we've covered here in a number of potential questions. It's not just about the Nazis in the 1920s. But that's it for me for now. Thank you, as always, for listening. Cheers.